Welcome back. We're here to take some of the deepest source material and really distill it, turning it into knowledge that's not just thorough, but hopefully immediately impactful for you.
That's right. And today we're really focusing in on, well, a single piece of ancient poetry. It's the 61st Psalm, and you'll sometimes see it subtitled Finding the High Rock.
And this is, I think, a perfect piece for this kind of focused exploration, especially for you, the learner, who wants to get that knowledge quickly, but still wants those profound aha moments.
Absolutely. And the sources we're drawing from, specifically the commentary guided by the analysis of the UNFIJ team, they give us a roadmap for how desperation can really transform into dedication.
It's a journey, isn't it? The one outline in this psalm. It's so personal, but it's also, I mean, it's universally relevant.
It is. You start with David, who, by all accounts, was the most successful king in Israel's history, and he is feeling completely, utterly overwhelmed, isolated.
And yet, by the end of this, a very short poem, we find him anchored. He's in a state of perpetual praise, unshakable trust. It's a complete pivot.
A total 180. And that transformation, it really begins right away with the context. The source material tells us to pay very close attention to the title.
The title, okay.
It says, "To the chief musician upon Nagina, a psalm of David."
So let's spend some time on that superscript, because there are a few details packed in there. We know the author is David, that's clear. But what's the implication of addressing it to the chief musician?
Well, it fundamentally changes how we should read this.
Yeah.
This tells us it was never, ever intended to be a private reflection.
Not a diary entry.
Exactly, not a journal that David just hid away. By giving it to the chief musician, David was ensuring that his personal vulnerability, his raw cry for help, was immediately set to music.
And put into public worship.
Right. It elevates his individual struggle into a communal spiritual experience for the whole nation of Israel. It was always meant to be sung by everyone.
And that musical instruction, Nagina, that's a technical detail, but it actually adds to the emotional context, doesn't it?
It really does. The Gina signifies it was meant to be accompanied by stringed instruments. So you're thinking of a harp or a lyre.
Okay, which is different from, say, horns or big percussion.
Very different. Stringed instruments often accompanied melodies that were more lyrical, introspective, or tender. So just imagine the sound of a harp playing under these words of desperation and eventually resolve. The music itself was designed to pull the worshiper into a state of contemplation.
So he didn't just write what he felt, he was very careful about curating how that feeling should be delivered to the people.
He wanted them to internalize the whole process, the feeling of being overwhelmed, and then the act of finding that refuge.
It sets up the core theme so well, which is really what the analysis here is all about. How does a leader, someone who seemingly has everything, power, wealth, God's promise, how does that person deal with moments when the world just collapses?
And where do they turn? Where does a person with that much responsibility turn for a stable refuge when everything else, including, human help, has completely failed?
And it's so crucial to remember, as the sources emphasize, this wasn't some abstract worry he was having.
Oh, no.
David wrote this while facing genuine existential threats. Whether he was fleeing from King Saul's jealousy or maybe later dealing with the devastating betrayal of his own son, Absalom, the danger was real. It was physical and immediate.
Absolutely. When we get into the intensity of the language he uses, you have to remember the geopolitical reality of ancient Israel. Refuge wasn't just a nice metaphor.
It was life or death.
Life or death. But as we're about to see, David uses that physical need to illustrate something much, much deeper, a spiritual requirement we all have.
Okay, so let's get into the first verse. The opening line is just so raw, so direct. It throws us right into the emotional, the epicenter of David's crisis.
It does. And we should read the verse as it's presented in the King James Version, which is what the commentary from the UNFIJ team uses. It's Psalm 61, verse 1. "Hear my cry, O God. Attend unto my prayer."
That dual action there, I find that so fascinating. He's not just, speaking. He's doing two very distinct types of communication. There's a cry, and then there's a prayer. Why both? What does the analysis suggest?
This is a really nuanced distinction, and it elevates the opening from just a simple plea to a complete picture of human petition. The Hebrew word for cry, which is rina, it generally refers to something loud, spontaneous,
Emotional.
very emotional, born of desperation. It's that raw, unfiltered eruption of anguish. It might even be accompanied by wailing or tears.
It's the sound you make when rational thought is gone and the danger is right there in front of you.
Precisely. But then you have the prayer, or tefillah, which is a much more structured communication.
Right.
It implies focused thought, some introspection, and a deliberate formulation of requests. It's the disciplined act of communion with God. So what David does is he brings both. He brings his overwhelming, messy, immediate emotion, the rena, and his focused, rational request, the tefillah to God at the same time.
He doesn't wait until he's calm and collected to start talking.
Not at all. And I think there's a risk, if we focus too much on just the raw cry,
Yeah.
that we might overlook the need for discipline in the prayer. Does the analysis get into that balance?
It does. The commentary from the You Need Faith in Jesus team really emphasizes that the goal isn't to choose one over the other. It's about bringing your whole self. God welcomes that raw emotion, but he also honors the focused commitment that results in a structured prayer.
So it's acknowledging the full scope of our humanity, our
I-
chaos and our commitment.
Exactly, and the verbs are just as important. He asks God to hear the sound, but then to attend to the prayer. What's that subtle choice of words imply?
Well, attend implies active, focused engagement. It's so much more than just passive reception.
Right, hearing is just letting the sound waves hit your eardrum.
Exactly. If David only asked God to hear him, that would just mean God registers the sound. But attend means incline your ear, pay close attention, and most importantly, respond with action.
So that's where the relational part comes in. He's not just shouting into a void.
No, he is demanding a response from a personal God that he knows is capable of giving one.
And that expectation, that confidence, is a pretty consistent theme in the Psalms, isn't it? The source material we have gives a cross-reference that confirms this as just, well, it's deeply embedded in David's spiritual DNA.
Yes, the source points us to Psalm 17, which was likely written during a similar time of extreme distress.
What does that say?
It's Psalm 17, verse 6. I have called upon thee, for thou wilt hear me, O God. Incline thine ear unto me, and hear my speech.
The confidence is just, it's breathtaking. He doesn't say, maybe you'll hear me. He says, for thou wilt hear me.
And this is the key takeaway the sources want us to grasp from this opening verse. It shows this consistent confidence throughout the Psalms that God is a listener who genuinely inclines his ear. He leans in to hear the words, and he fully intends to act on them.
And if David, in the middle of fleeing for his life, was certain of that relational engagement, it serves as a powerful foundation for you, the learner, today.
It really does.
So given that David is bringing both that desperate cry and the structured prayer, what's the practical application here? What does the analysis from the You Need Faith in Jesus team suggest we should do with this?
The practical instruction is, well, it's clear and it's incredibly freeing. The starting point for prayer is just sheer, unvarnished honesty.
You don't need special words.
No, you don't need special words or some predefined, tidy emotional state. The commentary says you simply begin where you are with an honest heart cry, and you do it with the confidence that the Father doesn't just register the sound, he actively leans in to listen and to respond.
So we move from that immediate, urgent plea for attention in verse 1 to the necessary confession of weakness and isolation in verse 2.
The movement is perfect. It's God, listen to me, and then it's, this is why you must listen to me.
First, you get the attention, then you define the problem and admit your own limitations. Okay, let's examine that emotional landscape. The next verse paints this really striking picture of distance and despair.
It does. This is Psalm 61, verse 2. From the end of the earth will I cry unto thee when my heart is overwhelmed. Lead me to the rock that is higher than I.
From the end of the earth. I mean, that phrase immediately brings up this feeling of profound isolation. You're far from help. Now, if David was literally fleeing, say, into the deserts near Philistine territory, it could be geographical.
It could be.
But what does the source material suggest is the primary interpretation here?
The analysis provided really highlights that while the context might include a physical exile, the phrase is primarily describing a deep emotional and spiritual distance.
Okay.
It's that feeling of being completely isolated. You're far from human aid, far from comfort, maybe even far from the tabernacle, the familiar center of worship. It's the experience of feeling irrelevant and forgotten.
Even if you're the king.
Even if you're the king. And this isolation is paired with a very specific emotional state. When my heart is overwhelmed, that's a very visceral term.
It is. What's the commentary's definition of overwhelmed?
It's defined as being swamped, submerged, completely overcome by troubles, the pressures of life, political threats, emotional exhaustion, personal failures. They have literally risen above his head. He's drowning in them.
And this is David, the mighty warrior, admitting with just devastating clarity, I've reached my limit. I can't save myself from this.
He's hit the wall of personal limitation. And in that moment of surrender, what does he ask for? He asks to be led to the rock that is higher than I.
He doesn't say, give me superhuman stamina to scale this cliff myself.
And that distinction is the very heart of grace. It's the foundation of the Christian life. We really need to unpack the rock imagery here.
Right.
In the Judean wilderness, rocks and cliffs, they weren't just symbols. They were physical fortresses. They offered high ground, natural defense, stability against enemies, and against the weather. But David adds that crucial modifier, higher than I.
Meaning this specific refuge, this one, is inaccessible by his own power.
Exactly. He's illustrating that the necessary refuge is beyond his reach, physically, intellectually, spiritually. He needs divine assistance. He needs a rescue operation to be lifted up and securely placed on that stable ground.
And if David, who had probably climbed every hill in that wilderness, says he can't reach this one,
then we, too, have to recognize the futility of relying on our own self-help strategies for ultimate spiritual security.
And this is where the analysis from the UNFIJ in Jesus team becomes absolutely critical, because it immediately identifies who this rock is.
This is the essential messianic connection. It's what ties this psalm directly to the New Testament believer.
Right.
We're pointed to the apostolic interpretation of this rock imagery, which we find in the Apostle Paul's writing.
Okay, where's that?
It's in 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 4. And did all drink the same spiritual drink? For they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ.
Wow. That cross-reference just shifts the entire perspective. The rock that provided water for the Israelites in the desert is identified as Christ.
And the rock David needs to be lifted onto centuries later is also Christ. The theological synthesis is, well, it's unshakable. Jesus is the unshakable foundation.
He is the refuge we can't possibly reach with our own efforts.
For our own ingenuity.
Yeah.
He is the one who lifts us out of the floodwaters of our troubles. He's the stable ground when we feel completely swamped.
So this moves the prayer from a request for some abstract safety to a request for a relationship with the specific person who is the foundation.
And that completely transforms the practical application. When life's pressures hit, the prayer should not be for personal strength to climb the cliff face.
No.
It should be for the Lord to lift us up and securely place our feet on Him. It's a surrender of our own effort in exchange for the certainty of rescue.
So the moment we realize our strength is inadequate isn't the moment of failure.
Not at all. It's the necessary moment of humility that allows God to perform the divine rescue.
It forces a massive redirection of our energy. Instead of exhausting ourselves trying to claw our way up some impossible cliff, which is what anxiety and self-reliance demand we do, we stop.
We stop, we confess our inability, and we ask the rescuer to do the lifting. It's all perfectly encapsulated in that one plea, lead me to the rock that is higher than I.
And once David has established that desperation and his need for a divine rescue, he immediately pivots in verse 3. He transitions to a declaration of his past experience.
It's the spiritual mechanism he uses to move from drowning to confidence.
It's faith fueled by memory.
Exactly. He's saying, I need help now, and I know I will get it because I have the evidence.
Let's read that powerful affirmation. It's the 4 clause that anchors his current hope to his actual history with God.
Okay, this is Psalm 61, verse 3. For thou hast been a shelter for me, and a strong tower from the enemy.
The word for is so critical there, isn't it? It signifies the logic of faith. I know you will answer my plea in verse 2 because you have been a shelter in verse 3.
His confidence is built on evidence. It's not just wishful thinking. And the commentary from the UNFIJ in Jesus team really emphasizes that this is rooted in empirical lived experience. David isn't guessing. He's citing his own history.
He has a record of God's faithfulness, and that record is the fuel for his current faith.
It is.
Let's get deeper into the imagery here. He uses 2 distinct protective images, a shelter and a strong tower. What's the functional difference between those in the ancient world?
They represent 2 different kinds of trouble. A shelter, or macha in Hebrew, is fundamentally passive protection.
Okay.
It's a temporary covering, a place of refuge from life's common difficulties. The heat of the sun, an unexpected storm, the exhaustion of a long journey. It's where you go to find peace and quiet away from general stress.
So it's a quick fix for the elements of daily life.
Exactly. A strong tower, though, a Migdal, that is active protection. This term refers to an impenetrable, well-manned military fortress, a defensive structure designed to withstand a siege and defend against an active, aggressive enemy.
So that's what you invoke when the threat is explicit, hostile, and it's actively seeking your destruction.
Precisely. So David is cataloging God's character as both his passive rest, the source of peace in everyday exhaustion, and his active, impenetrable military defender against a specific attack.
God provides comprehensive security.
And this defense is profoundly linked not just to a structure, but to God's very character, his name. And the sources make this connection explicit by referencing the book of Proverbs.
Which one?
Proverbs chapter 18, verse 10. The name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous runneth into it and is safe.
That makes the refuge so profoundly personal. The defense is the character and the known attributes of God himself. David realized that to invoke the name of the Lord is to access the highest level of military defense available in the entire universe.
It is. And what's so fascinating here is the spiritual practice that David is demonstrating for us. When he felt overwhelmed, he didn't just pray. He actively looked back. He looked back on past answers to prayer, the moments he was sheltered, the battles where he was defended. This detailed history, which he carefully cultivated in his spiritual memory, is what fuels his current conviction.
So if the crisis of being overwhelmed can often, wipe our memory banks clean, it makes us so present-focused and anxious, David is actively prescribing remembering as the antidote.
It's the essential antidote to anxiety. Anxiety tells us that God has forgotten us, or that our current situation is completely unprecedented. And David combats that by actively reciting his history with God. He moves from "I am overwhelmed" to "you have been a strong tower."
And this leads right to the core practical application that the You Need Faith in Jesus team emphasizes for you, the learner. It is vital to cultivate this memory intentionally.
Right, the actionable step here requires discipline. It requires intention. When you're facing a new challenge, whether it's a career crisis, a relationship difficulty, a health scare, you have to consciously stop. And you have to recall specific, documented instances of God's past faithfulness.
You have to remember specific prayers that were answered.
Exactly. Specific moments of inexplicable provision, times when an unexpected peace just settled over you during the chaos.
Because if you don't keep some kind of record, whether it's mental or written, your current crisis will always feel like the first time God has ever been absent, even if he's been present 1,000 times before.
Faith has to be built on a fulfilled history.
Absolutely. And that shift in focus from the present trouble to past faithfulness, that's what allows David to move beyond his immediate need and express a desire for something more. Constant, intimate, perpetual fellowship.
Which is the necessary step toward real security. The logic is sound. If God is this comprehensive in his defense, why would I ever want to step out from under his protection?
And that leads us to verse 4. David's desire for fellowship in this verse is, it's radical. He's committing his entire life to perpetual presence.
He is. This is Psalm 61, verse 4. I will abide in thy tabernacle forever. I will trust in the covert of thy wings. Selah.
Okay, that phrase, I will abide in thy tabernacle forever, would have had a very specific geographical meaning in David's time. The tabernacle was the central physical dwelling place of God's presence.
Right. And David is expressing a commitment that goes way beyond just occasional piety. He desires permanent residency. To abide in thy tabernacle forever meant living continually in that specific central place of God's presence among his people.
It wasn't just a place to visit for a festival.
Not at all. For David, it represented the entire framework of security and belonging for his life.
And then he immediately contrasts the architectural stability of the tabernacle with this extraordinarily tender image, the covert of thy wings.
It's a beautiful piece of imagery. You go from the military defense of the strong tower to the biological warmth and safety of nature. It's this powerful metaphor of a mother bird, maybe an eagle, gathering her young under her feathers.
Right.
The image just communicates safety, warmth, and protection right there under the parent's feathers. It's vulnerability, finding complete security. And David declares his intention to live his entire life trusting completely in that loving parental protection.
So God is simultaneously the impenetrable strong tower, the defender, and the nurturing mother bird, the source of comfort and warmth.
He's tender and strong, and David commits to this forever. And then we get Selah. This tiny word holds immense importance in the flow of the psalm.
What's the significance of having Selah at this critical point of commitment?
Well, as the source material notes, Selah is a musical instruction. It most likely demands a pause for reflection.
A musical breath.
Exactly. In the middle of this profound declaration, I will trust in the loving, powerful care of God forever, David forces the singer and the listener to stop the music to take a deliberate breath, and to meditate deeply on the magnitude of the security you find in God's presence. It's a moment of spiritual digestion.
It's to make sure the truth sinks from your mind into your heart before you just rush on to the next line.
Yes, and the sources confirm the universality of this image. It shows that David wasn't alone in using this metaphor for safety.
Right. The commentary from the You Need Faith in Jesus team provides a stunning parallel from another psalm.
From Psalm 91, which reinforces this dual nature of protection, it's Psalm 91, verse 4, "He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler."
There it is again, that duality. The feathers provide the trust and the comfort, but his truth, his reliability, his covenant faithfulness, that's the shield and buckler. That's the military defense.
Tenderness and unshakable strength, completely combined. And this brings us to the new covenant reality. You see, David aimed to abide in the physical tabernacle. But the commentary instructs us that through faith in Jesus, God's presence is no longer geographically confined to a building.
His spirit is with us and in us.
Right, so our spiritual objective is still the same as David's perpetual abiding. But the geography has shifted from a physical structure to an internal spiritual reality.
And the practical aim, therefore, as outlined by the source analysis, is to live each day acutely aware of that presence.
Yes, we have to intentionally seek shelter in him and trust in his loving care, not just when a crisis hits, but as a permanent state. This is what it means to abide forever.
And that requires cultivating an awareness that you are already living under the covert of his wings. It's a fundamental shift from seeking refuge to recognizing you are already in the refuge.
It is, and that constancy is what secures the spiritual birthright that David recognizes in the very next verse. That abiding presence leads directly to a deeper confirmation of the relationship.
A sense of belonging and destiny.
Exactly.
So David's confidence just keeps accelerating. He moves from finding shelter to confirming his destiny and his inclusion in God's family.
He does. This is Psalm 61, verse 5. "For thou, O God, hast heard my vows. Thou hast given me the heritage of those that fear thy name."
The relationship here is so beautifully reciprocal. David knows God heard his desperate cries back in verse 1, but now he affirms God also heard his vows, his promises and commitments he made during times of dedication or repentance.
And this is a critical insight, as the commentary analyzes it, into the nature of a covenant relationship. Prayer isn't just a transactional act of asking for things. It's also an intentional act of committing. David is demonstrating his faithfulness, his intention to follow through on his promises, and God responds not just with protection, but with acceptance, with inclusion.
And the response is the gift of heritage. Thou hast given me the heritage of those that fear thy name. The greatest gift is belonging.
Yes, heritage or inheritance in this context is so much deeper than just land or possessions. It represents a spiritual birthright, a guaranteed place among God's chosen covenant people. David sees being included among those that fear thy name as the most precious unearned gift possible.
And we should probably pause here to make sure you, the learner, understand what the commentary means by to fear God's name. It can be a confusing concept.
It is crucial to clarify. This is not a terrified, paralyzing dread like fearing some cruel dictator. It means having a deep, profound, reverent respect. The Hebrew is yara for who he is, his immense power, his absolute holiness, and his boundless mercy.
And that deep reverence naturally leads to voluntary obedience, a desire to stay under his protection.
And David sees this inclusion as a gift given to those who hold God in that kind of awe.
And the analysis brilliantly pivots from this Old Testament concept of heritage to the New Testament fulfillment we receive through Christ. This connection is vital.
It is. The commentary from the You Need Faith in Jesus team connects David's spiritual birthright directly to our inheritance in Christ. It cites Paul's letter to the Ephesians, chapter 1, verse 11, "In whom also we have obtained an inheritance, being predestinated according to the purpose of him who worketh all things after the counsel of his own will."
So if David's inheritance was a place among the community of faith, our inheritance in Christ is adoption into the very family of God.
Secured by grace, obtained by faith. This inheritance includes the forgiveness of sins, the sealing of the Holy Spirit, and the promise of eternal life.
The core insight here is that our inclusion in God's family is this glorious inheritance, given solely by grace when we place our faith in Jesus. It's not something we earn.
Not at all. But this verse also serves as a powerful reminder that while the inheritance is received by grace, our relationship with God is confirmed and demonstrated through our commitments, our vows, and God hears those commitments.
That leads to two really vital practical steps for us today.
It does. First, we have to take time to genuinely reflect on the specific promises or commitments, the vows we've made to God. Maybe during a time of intense need, a crisis, or a formal dedication. We have to treat those commitments with sacred seriousness.
And second?
Second, to live with profound daily gratitude for the spiritual inheritance we've already received. The fact that we are adopted, chosen, and we belong to the family of the eternal King.
And that sets us up perfectly for the grand finale of the psalm.
The logic flows perfectly. Because I am a privileged heir, I can trust in the power of the King. And that shifts the psalm from David's personal history to the ultimate destiny of his entire royal line.
This next section is really the theological apex of the whole psalm. The focus abruptly shifts from David's individual safety to his function as the king and the destiny of the monarchy itself.
Yes, and we really must read these two verses together to capture the magnitude of the prophetic language being used. It's Psalm 61, verses 6 and 7. Thou wilt prolong the king's life, and his years as many generations. He shall abide before God forever. O prepare mercy and truth, which may preserve him.
Now, in its immediate historical context, David is praying for himself. He's praying for the longevity of his immediate royal dynasty, that his son, his successor, might have a long and stable reign.
That's the surface reading, yes. However, the analysis provided by the You Need Faith in Jesus team highlights that the terminology used here dramatically exceeds the capacity of any mortal man or dynasty.
Right, phrases like, his years as many generations, and especially, he shall abide before God forever. No earthly monarch, not even Solomon, could fulfill that.
It's purely prophetic language. It's guiding the reader toward the Messiah. To really understand the weight of this prayer, you have to place it within the context of the Davidic covenant.
Which was established where?
In 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 16. God had promised David, thy throne shall be established forever.
So David's prayer isn't just a personal wish. It's a confident restatement of a divine prophecy that has to come true, even if his current crisis threatens to wipe out his mortal line.
Exactly. David is essentially praying, fulfill your promise. He recognizes that only an eternal king, the ultimate fulfillment of his line, the Messiah, can truly abide before God forever.
And this is the cornerstone teaching of the perspective from the You Need Faith in Jesus team.
It is, identifying Jesus Christ as the ultimate messianic king from the line of David, whose reign never, ever ends.
And the idea of a king abiding forever immediately finds its complete fulfillment in the New Testament. The source material locks this down by cross-referencing to the book of Hebrews.
This is a powerful integration. It really cements the connection.
Yeah.
It's Hebrews chapter 7, verse 24. But this man, because he continueth ever, hath an unchangeable priesthood.
The unchangeable priesthood and the never-ending reign, they're two sides of the same eternal coin. Jesus' eternal nature solves David's mortal dilemma.
It does. David can only ask for many years. Jesus is eternity. The stability of our refuge is secured by his perpetual existence.
And notice the profound humility and wisdom in David's prayer for how this everlasting king will be preserved. In verse 7, he says, "O prepare mercy and truth, which may preserve him."
That is so revealing. David recognizes that even this eternal righteous reign has to be founded on and upheld by foundational divine attributes.
A lasting, righteous reign can't rely on human strength or temporary political alliances.
It has to be based on God's own unchangeable character, his mercy and his truth. Mercy ensures the king's compassion, even in judgment, and truth ensures the integrity of his rule and his promises. If a kingdom is built on those two pillars, God's unchanging character, it cannot fail.
So the expert insight here is crystal clear. Our ultimate hope, our ultimate security, it's not found in the fragile, mutable systems of this world.
Not in earthly leaders, not in political kingdoms, not even in personal financial stability.
Our hope is found solely in King Jesus,
who reigns forever, established and preserved by God's foundational attributes of mercy and truth. This refocusing is the great takeaway of this section.
And if we look at the practical application suggested by the source analysis, it's a powerful call to redirect our reliance when instability hits.
Yes, when you're faced with political chaos, economic volatility, or social uncertainty, the You Need Faith in Jesus team instructs us to actively place our hope and our security not in mutable human systems, which will always disappoint or expire, but in the unchangeable, eternal King.
And that shift transforms our shelter from a fragile, temporary tent into an unshakable, eternal fortress.
It provides immense peace. When David prays for the prolonging of the king's life, He is ultimately securing his own peace and the eternal peace of all who run to that strong tower.
And that conviction, that security in the eternal reign, leads him directly to his final commitment in the last verse.
It's the inevitable conclusion. Finding an eternal refuge leads to a promise of perpetual praise and devotion.
Okay, this final verse is the confident conclusion that ties everything together. The desperation of verse 1, the refuge of verse 2, the prophecy of eternal kingship. It's David's response to God's guaranteed provision.
It is. Psalm 61, verse 8. So will I sing praise unto thy name forever, that I may daily perform my vows.
The word so, or therefore, is the pivot point. Because God heard the cry, because he is the high rock, and because he established an eternal king, therefore David commits to this specific lifestyle of gratitude.
And the resulting commitment is continuous and twofold. It demonstrates the integration of faith and works. First, he promises to sing praise unto thy name forever. Worship is a continuous, perpetual activity.
And second, to daily perform my vows. Obedience and commitment are constant.
This emphasizes the vital, inseparable connection between our internal adoration and our external actions. True worship isn't just a grateful feeling or some isolated activity reserved for certain days.
No. As highlighted by the commentary from the You Need Faith in Jesus team, true worship is a grateful, daily lifestyle that expresses itself through continuous obedience.
It's an integrated approach to faith where our actions are a song, just as much as our words are.
And the sources confirm this idea of continuous lifestyle worship by providing a New Testament echo, which reinforces its application for you, the believer, today.
The source quotes Hebrews chapter 13, and it shifts the terminology just slightly to the concept of a sacrifice.
What does it say?
Hebrews 13:15. By him, therefore, let us offer the sacrifice of praise to God continually, that is, the fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name.
The idea of a sacrifice of praise that's offered continually is so significant. A sacrifice usually costs something.
It does.
This means we don't only praise when things are easy or when we feel emotionally uplifted. We offer praise even when it costs us effort. And that praise stems directly from the realization that we have been heard, sheltered, and secured by the eternal King.
And that brings us right back to the practical and immediate part. Daily perform my vows. This makes our commitment measurable. It's immediate. It prevents praise from becoming purely abstract.
So the practical step provided by the You Need Faith in Jesus team is deeply actionable here. We have to ensure our worship is active. We need to internalize that our daily actions, our obedience, our honesty, our commitments are just as much a song of praise as our spoken words.
And the actionable step is to identify one specific vow or commitment you've made to God and focus on performing it daily. Consistency is the quiet heart of spiritual discipline. It closes the loop perfectly. The overwhelming feeling in verse 2 is answered by the perpetual praise and daily commitment in verse 8.
The temporary trouble leads to eternal devotion.
Exactly.
So if we synthesize the core message of this entire journey through Psalm 61, we see this powerful redemptive movement. It takes us from David's extreme vulnerability, his desperate cry from the end of the earth,
all the way to his absolute certainty and his confident commitment to sing praise unto thy name forever.
We started with David as the overwhelmed human. We defined the problem of isolation and personal limitation, and then we identified the only enduring solution in two crucial messianic figures: the rock who lifts us up and the eternal King who preserves us by his mercy and truth.
And we are thankful for the analysis provided by the You Need Faith in Jesus team for giving us those deep connections, linking David's ancient plea directly to our present spiritual reality, and focusing so keenly on Christ's role as our unshakable foundation and eternal refuge.
That synthesis is just vital for understanding the practical authority of the Psalms for us today.
It is.
This has been an incredibly deep dive. I hope that you, the learner, really gained those aha moments, seeing how that fear of being overwhelmed can be instantly met by the intentional practice of memory and the recognition of an eternal King.
And that leads us to our final provocative thought for you to mull over this week. Think about this. David, who had experienced God's protection firsthand, who had been given shelter and had stood in the strong tower, he still had to cultivate the memory of God's faithfulness to sustain his present trust.
He didn't just rely on osmosis, he relied on intention.
He did.
So ask yourself this: what intentional practices can you implement this week, starting right now, to ensure that your past experiences of God's goodness actively fuel your future faith, rather than allowing your present anxiety to overwrite the historical record of his faithfulness?
How will you turn those memories into immediate, daily spiritual momentum.
We look forward to diving deep into your next stack of sources. Until then, stay curious.